Hello everyone, it's Miss Angela from the Fort Worth Public Library. Welcome back to another Fort Worth Nature Center Discovery Club story time. Today we are talking about rivers. We're going to sing a song that you almost certainly already know. Can you make a guess about what it is? It's Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Did you know that a stream is a small river? Let's start with the version you already know. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Now we're going to switch it up and sing some new verses. We're going to row our boats down the stream, but when we see a crocodile, don't forget to scream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. If you see a crocodile, don't forget to scream. Next is, we're going to row our boat down the Nile, which is a big river in Egypt. If you see a camel, don't forget to smile. Row, row, row your boat gently down the Nile. If you see a camel, don't forget to smile. Next, we're going to row our boats gently down the river. And if you see a polar bear, don't forget to shiver. Row, row, row your boat gently down the river. If you see a polar bear, don't forget to shiver. It's cold where polar bears live. Next, we're going to row our boats gently out to sea. Did you know that a lot of rivers go to the sea? And if you see a great blue whale, invite it home for tea. Row, row, row your boat gently out to sea. If you see a great blue whale, invite it home for tea. Next is, we're going to row our boat back to the shore. And if we see a lion, don't forget to, I bet you can guess what goes there. Row, row, row your boat gently back to shore. If you see a lion, don't forget to roar! Good job. It's such a great early literacy practice to put our own words to songs. Try rowing your boat down the creek and see what kind of rhyme you can come up with. Our story today comes from the Ojibwe or Chippewa community of Native North Americans. Once upon a time, there was a river, beautiful and full of fish with pure, sweet water. All of the animals went there to drink and gathered happily along the banks. One day, a giant moose heard about the river and came to drink. The moose was so big and drank so much that soon the water began to sink, lower and lower. The bear was worried. He ate fish from the river for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The beaver was worried. The water around her lodge was disappearing. Soon her home would be destroyed. The muskrat was worried too. What would he have to drink if the river was gone? The fly was worried because she laid her eggs on the banks of the river. The animals asked the moose politely to drink less, but the moose just laughed. Ha ha ha. One night, when the moose was away, the animals spoke together to try to come up with a plan. "I will gnaw on his leg," said the beaver, who was very brave. So the next day, the beaver gnawed on the moose's leg. The moose gave a big kick and sent the poor beaver flying. The next night, they all looked at the muskrat. "Don't look at me," he said. "I'm not planning on getting a bruise like beavers. How about you, Bear?" Yes," said Bear. "I guess I am the biggest and the strongest." "The moose is even bigger than you," said the fly. "I have a plan." The animals all laughed. "Yes, the moose is bigger than me," said Bear, "but it's much bigger than you, Fly." So the next day, Bear snuck up to the moose. When he looked up and saw how much bigger the moose was, Bear ran away. That night, the animals cried together. "How will we ever drive away the moose?" wailed Beaver. "I have a plan," said Fly. "You're too small to do anything to a moose," said Muskrat, and the animals continued to cry. But the fly thought of her eggs, needing the moisture of the river, and decided she would give it a try anyway. The next day, Fly landed on the leg of the moose and took a big bite. The moose stamped its foot in irritation. Then the fly jumped about all over the moose, biting and biting and biting until the moose was in a frenzy. He ran madly along the banks of the river, shaking his head, stamping his feet, snorting and blowing, but he couldn't get rid of that pesky fly. At last the moose fled from the river and didn't come back. That night the animals had a big party in honor of Fly. "You may be the smallest," said Bear, "but we are very lucky that you are also the wisest." The end. The animals sure were lucky that Fly was so wise, even though she was so small. That's it for our story. It's time to pass it over to Mr. Michael at the Nature Center to tell you more about rivers. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. This is Michael Perez with the Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge. We're live here at the Nature Center, and we're going to be talking about rivers today. Now, Miss Angela with the Fort Worth Public Library, she's shared a little story time regarding rivers, so thank you very much for that, Miss Angela. So now we're going to talk about rivers. Now we're going to talk about big picture, okay? We could break down rivers and talk a little bit about the aquatic wildlife, the aquatic vegetation, how a river is created, all sorts of things. There's so many different directions that we can go with this. But I have a few things I want to talk about, and I have an example, a representative, an animal that you would find in the river. So I'm going to show that at the very end. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about the water cycle and how that helps replenish the rivers. We're going to talk about the importance of rivers. We'll talk about wildlife and things like that. So we'll touch on a lot of those different things this morning. So I'm glad you can tune in this morning. So right behind me, I have the West Fork of the Trinity River. I'm going to get out of the way. The West Fork of the Trinity River is a very, very important part of our of the Nature Center, because this river comes right through our property and it serves so many great purposes. Now, if we were to get in a canoe or kayak and go up that direction right here, it would take us to the Eagle Mountain Dam. And then as we go this way, continue down the river, it's going to take us to Lake Worth. Imagine if we kept going, and we kept going and kept going. We had all the time, we could do that. Eventually, it'll take us through Fort Worth, our beloved city, and go south of Dallas, and then connect down and go down to the Gulf Coast there in the Houston Bay. This river right here will take you to the Houston Bay, exactly right. So this river here is very important because it connects a lot of communities, not just Fort Worth, but a lot of communities downriver and a lot of communities upriver. So we all have to work together and make sure this water here is clean, because a lot of us use this. So let's talk about the importance of rivers, okay, and water in particular. This river is important because that's drinking water. I don't think you want to go there and take a drink of the water right there. But this water here gets cleaned up, and then you turn on your faucet and the water comes out. There you go. Thanks to this river right here. So Trinity, the West Fork of the Trinity River is a very important river for us because it provides water for us. Now here at the Nature Center, it has another purpose, another function, and that is to provide habitat and life, if you will, to a lot of wildlife we have here. Every living thing requires water. We all must have water. Every living thing, plants, animals, us, and the river here serves that purpose for a lot of wildlife. Now, can you think of some animals that would live in this water, that would need this water, especially clean water? Can you think of some real quick? Da 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 da. All right, you may not know the reference, you young kids, but the parents will. So yes, you probably shared a lot of really cool animals that live in our area in the water, such as turtles, frogs, which we talked about last week. Frogs. We also have snakes that live in the water. A lot of macroinvertebrates, dragonflies, before they're fully grown adults, they start in the water. You know, the tadpoles, as I said, frogs, fish. Yeah, there's so many animals that live and rely on this river for them to have sustained life. And we have to make sure we do everything we can to protect this river so that they have a home. So the river is important for us because it is drinking water after it gets nice and clean, and also habitat. place for animals like fish, turtles, snakes, frogs, and so forth have a place to live. So it's very important. Now, we look at this water and, well, how did the water get there? Now, did y'all come and bring a hose in and fill this up? No, of course not. Of course you didn't. Of course you didn't. The water that we have here in the river is part of a cycle. It's called the water cycle. Think about your bicycles, the wheels. The wheels on your bicycle go round and round, round and round, round and round. Did I just do that? Oh gosh, I can't believe I did that. People are gonna laugh at me, I know it. So anyway, the cycle, the water cycle is like your bicycle. The wheels just keep turning around in circles and just keeps going and going and going. Same thing with our water cycle. And the water cycle plays an important role in this river. So I have here a water cycle for you to see. So let's talk about the water cycle. Now the first step, or the first important piece of the water cycle is that bright thing in there in the sky, that sun. The sun creates that energy, the driving force that gets that water cycle going. So got to have a sun. And with that sun, it produces heat, okay? And it warms up the water in the river. And what happens is there are three, and let me back up, there are three different phases of water, okay, that we're going to talk about today. We have a liquid state, has a solid state like ice, like an ice cube, and then a gas, okay, gas stage. And that's what we're going to talk about. So as that heat, that energy, that sun is driving that water cycle, the first thing occurs, and that is called evaporation. When that heat goes onto to the water, and that heat causes that liquid phase of water to transform into a gas. And that's what happened. Evaporation is the first part of the water cycle. So here we go. So that heat, the heat from the sun, is causing that water to rise, or I'm sorry, the water to transform and change into a gas state, and it rises up into the sky. One way you can see evaporation on a small scale. Next time at home when your mom and dad are cooking, say they're making some macaroni and cheese. I know my daughter, she loves macaroni and cheese. Macaroni and cheese, or just something where you're boiling water. When you boil water, you get the water in there, you start to boil it, and after a while it gets hot, and then you see that steam rise. That's essentially what's happening with evaporation. The heat source is causing it to rise. So evaporation. The next stage is called condensation, up here at the top. Condensation. So what's happening with condensation is as that gas is rising up in the atmosphere, in the sky, it meets some cold air, or colder air. So when you have that warm and that cold, that water, the gas turns back into water vapor, okay, droplets, and they condense, okay, and they cause the formation of clouds. If you look around your backyard, you see clouds. That's the process or the result of condensation. Now, another really quick way you can see condensation at your home is, oh, I got to be careful not to drip on my computer. But if you look close, you see all those water droplets on my water bottle. Let me turn it around. Shameless plug. Fort Worth Nature Center. There you go. All those little droplets of water. What's happening is I put some ice in this cold water and ice in my really cool Fort Worth Nature Center water bottle. And as I brought it outside in this heat, you can see, whoo, it's hot out here. The heat, the warm and the cold meet, and then all that, you get those creation of those water droplets. And that's essentially what's happening in the sky, and all these water droplets collect, they build up the clouds, and then we have clouds, and then we can look at them and enjoy them, and see what kind of shapes they make. Clouds, that's another topic we can talk about here at Discovery Club. But let's keep moving on with the water cycle. Water cycle, you have condensation, and then after a while, when those clouds get so heavy, they release that moisture in the form of rain, hail, sleet, that white stuff I wish we had more often, that I miss so much, snow. All those are forms of precipitation. So we have evaporation, the sun creating the energy, driving that water cycle by causing that water to turn into a gas, rise up, meets cold air, forms back in water droplets, in the form of clouds, builds up, they get too heavy, and they precipitate in the form of rain, sleet, snow, hail, and so forth. And then all that rain runs off and recollects into the river here, and we start the cycle over again. Now, just as a disclaimer, you notice I'm sitting here to the side. You know, I'm not hiding from you guys. I just want you to see the big picture, the river there. That's why I'm here to the side. So that's the water cycle, and that's what allows this to fill up, and also provide water for plants. I'm looking over at the plants over here, the trees that are along the edge of the river, as well as the wildlife. So the water cycle is very important, and we can't talk about rivers without talking about that wonderful water cycle. Okay, so that's the water cycle. I'm going to put that to the side there. All right, so let's transition and talk about the importance of the river. Now, we already said that it creates food, or I'm sorry, shelter, it's a habitat, it's an ecosystem for fish and all those animals. It's drinking water for us. But let's also talk about the things that rivers have to deal with. Okay, rivers have issues too, and part of it is our problem too. That's why we encourage everybody, you're near the water or you're outside, you know, dispose of your trash properly. You know, we don't want the river to get polluted, both with trash but also with chemicals, because we have to be very, very careful with that we don't do that. So one of the things that we do at the Nature Center, we go out in canoes and kayaks, and we may go and pick up trash. We've done that before for our summer camp kids as well. So keeping the water clean by not putting trash in it. Also, chemicals can play a major role in rivers. Now, we may have bugs and things that we do not like very much, pests, or we want to get our grass nice and green and we put chemicals on it to get it going. But unfortunately, some of those chemicals can run off and get into our rivers and cause a big issue. It can cause some of the plant life near the edge to grow, taking in all that oxygen. It can be very detrimental. So we want to make sure we don't introduce any chemicals or pollutants into the water. Another issue that rivers have that we have to really think about is along the, gotta wipe myself off, it's hot out here. Along the edge there, right there is called the bank. So when you're on the river, you have there's two sides of banks. As water is moving, it's taking away some of that soil that's on the edge. And that soil that's on the edge gets lost, okay? Now I'm going to teach you a fancy word. It's called erosion, okay? Erosion. So that's what happens. The banks get eroded because of all the moving water, the wind, and all the soil gets lost. And then our banks get deeper, and then it causes a problem for our rivers. In addition to that, all that soil, all that sediment gets into the water. It can actually build up. And that could be a problem for fish because say this is your top of your river and this was the bottom. Over time, as that sediment builds up, what are you losing? You're losing space. Also, that sediment can be built upon, say, fish or other eggs, fish eggs or other animals that they're laying eggs. So it can build on top of that and cause a really bad thing for future fish or future macroinvertebrates or whatever. So we want to be very careful that we do everything we can. So one of the things that we do here at the Nature Center is along the edges of the water, we have native grasses that are along the edge. And the purpose of those native grasses is to hold all the soil together because those root systems are very intricate, very long, very deep, and it holds all that soil together. So along the edge here, it's important to have that riparian zone, all the trees and the grasses and the plants, because it holds all that soil together and prevents erosion and thus prevent sedimentation, which is a big issue too. So those are some issues that the river have, and not only does that play a role on the river itself, but it plays a role, has a major impact on the wildlife, such as the fish, the turtles, the frogs, the macroinvertebrates, and so forth. And those are all the important elements to keeping a river healthy. Actually, did you know that macroinvertebrates, things like dragonfly nymphs, damselfly nymphs, water scorpions, all these cool macroinvertebrates will only do well if the water is healthy. So we have to keep that in mind. So that's one of the things we try to do. We'll go out with groups and we'll test the water by grabbing the macroinvertebrates, getting a dip net and looking to see if we find all these dragonflies and damselflies and water scorpions and so forth. That means this water is healthy. And we do also testing too, to test how good the water is. And everything to this point indicates that this water here, there's a jet flying over, that's why I looked up. This water here is actually healthy for all the wildlife that are here. So that's good to know. So we talked about the importance of rivers, providing food, or I'm sorry, shelter, and a place for animals like fish and turtles and frogs. It's drinking water for us. We talked about the water cycle and how that water gets replenished and this river stays the way it is. And then we also talked about some of the bad things, some of the things that rivers have to deal with and the wildlife that in the river have to deal with. So we talked about those things here. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to show you a little bit more close up of the water. So I have some videos I want to show you. So I'm going to stop here for a second. And we're going to transition and look at some videos that I'm going to take along the water's edge so you can kind of get a closer look. And then after that, I have a friend I want to introduce you to. So hold on tight. All right, so I've gone to the water's edge and I'm just looking for whatever I can find. Now, along the water's edge here, along the river, there's several wasps and they're flying around. And if you look at the wasps, what are they trying to do? They're trying to get water. So this river, like I said, is very important because it's drinking water for us, but it's also drinking water for these red wasps. As I get closer, if you look in the middle of our screen here, you see all those little black specks. Now they're moving really fast. Those are called whirligigs. These are insects that kind of swim on the top, the surface of the water, and they're part of the the food web that we have here at the Nature Center, because little fish, frogs, and other animals, turtles, will eat these little whirligigs. They're swimming on top of the water. So that's the main, I guess, form of wildlife, if you will, that I see. Along the water's edge here, we can see there are trees. This tree right here, I'm going to kind of go upwards and give you a close look at the leaf so you can kind of see it. This is called an American sycamore. And American sycamores, you can find them along the water's edge because they can withstand, the root systems can withstand being submerged in water. As you can see, this root system is right near the water, soaking up all the water. In addition to trees, we also have plants. We have this plant here, it's called water willow. It likes to be near the water as well. And then there's also some plants that like to be totally submerged underwater. If you look in that direction right there, that's called American pondweed. It's a good plant to have. And it also provides shelter for animals that live in the water, such as those macroinvertebrates. So the river, the bank here, full of trees to help anchor and hold down the soil to prevent erosion. And then you also have vegetation in the water, in the rivers, to help provide shelter for wildlife. So here's a really quick scan of the river. Again, that takes you all the way to Eagle Mountain Lake. So it's a really important body of water. So I just kind of wanted to give you a quick look at the river and on the river's edge, so you can kind of give a good look at it and see what it's like. And all these plants that you see in front of me are very important because they hold that soil together and provide shelter and places for wildlife that live in the river to hang out. All right, so let's go back and talk a little bit about our special guest. All right, so we talked a little bit about the river, the importance of river, the things that rivers have to face, the water cycle. I showed you some video of the water's edge and kind of panned out so you can see the river. Now let's introduce you to a member or representative or someone who uses this river on a regular basis. And I'm talking about this turtle here. This turtle here is called a musk, M-U-S-K, musk turtle. This turtle here is totally adapted to living in the place behind me. And the reason for that is if you look at its feet, it has webbed toes. Let me kind of angle a little bit. I don't want to put it too close to my screen because I don't want to get wet, my computer wet. But if you look at that foot there, look how it's nice and webbed. So that allows this turtle to paddle in the water. So aquatic turtles like this musk turtle can paddle and swim in the water, and that's very important, as opposed to a terrestrial or a land like a tortoise that has the claws to walk. Okay, so this turtle here has webbed feet. Its shell, this part top of the shell here, that's called a carapace. The carapace is relatively flat. Yes, I see it kind of curves a little bit, but it's kind of flat. That allows it to swim extremely well. Now, another thing, if you mind me scooting over here for a second, that's really cool about these turtles is they swim in the water. You saw it, their feet are webbed, allows them to swim. But even another cool thing is they can climb. They're known to actually climb. And if you look at their plastron, which is the bottom part of their shell, you look near their, look how much room their legs stick out, okay? Most plastrons on land turtles, it's pretty much solid and the feet come to the side. But these kind of come down and there's a lot of space. It allows them to move their feet. So here, let's look at another shell. Look how wide open that is. Look how much space it is there, okay? Right here and right there, right here. That allows their legs to be able to get better, a more full range of motion. So by doing so, by having that full range of motion, they have the ability to climb. You know, they're not gonna be climbing up a tree straight up like that, but you know, relatively elevated or angled, they can still move their feet and climb. And that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to climb on me right now. I think he just yawned or he stuck his tongue at me, one or the other. This turtle here is called a musk turtle, also called a stink pot. Now, with a name like stink pot, what do you suspect that he can do? Yeah, release a stinky smell, right? And that's what musk is. Musk is, for wildlife, it's emitting a really foul smell as a form of defense to keep things away, you know? So this turtle here, this musk turtle, has the ability to let out a really musky smell, a stinky smell, and it keeps things away, animals away from them. So he doesn't want to be predated upon. Now sorry, it's hot out here. This turtle here will eat snails and small invertebrates, small fish if it needs to, small insects and so forth. So that's what he's going to be eating in the wild. So there's a great shot of his feet. Let me try to get closer. He's like, wow, I'm about to hit the screen. So this is a really cool turtle. If you notice, it's really hard to see. It's really hard to see. He has a long neck to help him to reach out for food and turn himself over if he gets stuck. He's not going to do it now, but he has these little barbs, if you will, that are down below his neck. You know, they can be sensitive to touch as he's moving along the water. So this is one of many animals that live in the river that we have to take care of. They're not threatened, but we have to be careful not to pollute and damage and hurt the aquatic or the river system so these animals can survive. Without us doing our part, they're not going to do very well. So, and by having them around, they help keep this system, the river system, nice and balanced, okay? Just like we talked about before. All right, so there's our common musk turtle. So I'm going to go ahead and put him down real quick. All right, I'm back. So that's going to conclude our edition of Discovery Club talking about the river. This is the West Fork of the Trinity River. Very important for a lot of reasons. I encourage you to come out to the Nature Center. You can walk along trails that hug the river so you can see them, see the river, see the possible wildlife like turtles and so forth. So come out and visit us. If you can't come to us, go to your neighborhood park or somewhere else. There's a lot of creeks and a lot of little pathways with water where you can enjoy and see aquatic plants, aquatic wildlife as well. So get out there, whether it be here at the Nature Center or in your neck of the woods. So thanks for joining us this week as we talked about rivers. And I hope you tune in next week, same time, same place, where we'll talk about another cool aspect of nature. So come out with us and discover nature here at the Nature Center in person and on the screen. Have a great week, guys. Bye-bye.